Hey, morning guys. Today's project is gonna be some wainscoting. So I'll take you inside and I'll show you what that's gonna look like. All right, here it is guys. This is our space. As you can see, we've got an existing wainscoting over here on this wall. That's the pattern that we're gonna be matching. It looks like it's a 1x4 pattern with a couple of pieces mixed in. Here's our new space. As you can see, there was wainscoting on the wall at one point, but we removed it. We've got a new opening. Closed another opening. We reconfigured this wall to make more space in the master bedroom. I'm gonna start by snapping some control lines, take you through the materials that we're using, an MDF panel board to go over the drywall, the 1x4 material for the verticals, 1x6 for some of the other sections, and I'll lay out the pattern with you guys so you can see how we do it. Okay, so the pattern that we've got over there, guys, is very simple. It calls for a few different materials. I like to try and buy material as close to the existing as possible using stuff that's pre-primed. So in that case, it's a 1x6 MDF. This is nice because it's got a finished primed edge on two sides. So when we go to paint this at the end, it's gonna finish out much nicer than if I were to make it out of like a sheet of MDF. A 1x4, that's gonna be our verticals. And we've got a 1x2. This is gonna be some of our trim pieces that sit along the top. As you notice inside, we got a piece that looks something like this. This is down on the base. And this is all gonna go over. There's two options. You know, sometimes people will come in and save a couple bucks. You can do like a smooth drywall finish over the space that you're working on, or very simple and very clean. You can buy what they have. It's a 1/4 inch MDF. It comes in 4x8 sheets. We can cut this down to the size of the pattern and we can glue this directly over the wall. That way our pattern finishes completely on like a nice, smooth, engineered piece of MDF molding. It's very inexpensive and it comes out much better. So what we'll do is we're gonna get this stuff cut. We're gonna start installing and I'll show you how we'll lay out the pattern. All right guys, so step number one is we're gonna get ready to install our MDF panels on the wall. That's gonna be the first layer of this pattern. Everything else is gonna sit on top of it. What I've done is I cheated a little bit. I've got a laser level. I took that laser. As you can see, I set it to the existing pattern all the way across. What I can do now is I'll measure up to that. That's gonna tell me how high to rip my panel. I got 42 1/4, 42 3/8. So what I'm gonna do is, because this pattern gives me like 5 inches of coverage, basically what that means is you're not gonna see this panel behind here. So I'm gonna cheat a little bit. This is a nice trick. It makes things a little bit easier. I'm gonna rough cut that stuff. If I've got 42 3/8, I'm gonna cut everything at 41 inches. That way I know it's never gonna be above my pattern. When I come back and set my final trim piece, I can set that tight to the wall. All right, so what I've done now is I'm gonna need 3 panels to cover the whole length of that wall. So I've taken the 3 boards that I have, I've put them on top of each other, I've lined up all the corners so they're nice and tight. I'm gonna go ahead and cut all 3 at the same time. So what I'll do now is I'm gonna measure from one edge. Inside we had 42. I'm gonna cut these at about 41. So I'm gonna mark 41. Round to the other end, mark that 41 inches. And I'm gonna take my chalk box. And I'm gonna snap a quick line with my chalk box. That's gonna show me what line I need to cut. That transfers that line there, so now I see what I'm cutting. It's time to cut. All right guys, so what I'm doing now is I'm using my magnetic stud finder. These are really nice because it grabs onto any of the screws or the nails that are in the wall. If it's grabbing onto the screw or the nail, you know that it's in wood, so you find your stud. What I'm gonna do is I'm gonna mark all my studs so I know where I've got good backing for this panel when I nail it on. All right guys, so now that all my studs are marked, the next thing that I took into consideration was the existing pattern. So I went around and I measured different panels inside here. None of them are exactly the same, but based on the length of my wall, what I'm gonna end up with are even space panels at around 18 inches. I've pulled where my end and my start is to create a seam because I'm gonna need more than one piece of the MDF. So I marked the seam out on the wall. I'm gonna go cut the MDF to length. I'm gonna hide the seam behind a batten. That way you don't have any seams running through the middle of your pattern. So I'm gonna mark that, I'll cut it to length, and I'm gonna mark these holes. As you can see, I've got an outlet over here, I've got another outlet over here, and an outlet on this one. So I'm gonna mark those hole locations. I'm gonna cut those out before I put this panel in, glue the panel up, put it over, nail it into the studs. It's ready to go. 15. guys, so I dry fit my piece, as you can see. The outlet's cut perfect. Now I'm gonna glue it and start nailing it to the wall. All right guys, so what I've done now is I got my bottom piece started. I've cut it to length. I'm gonna nail that in and I'm gonna start laying out the pattern. All right guys, we got our pieces. These are all cut to length. Let's go stick them on the wall and start laying out our pattern. All right guys, so I've got my vertical panels cut. I'm gonna start lining these out. What I'm gonna do, this is just the quick easy math. I'm gonna put one on this side. I'm gonna put one on the other side. I'm gonna measure in the middle and I'm just gonna continue to split the middle. Start with the first piece, put some glue. Now I've switched nail guns for this piece because now everything's gonna start to be visible. I'm using a 23 gauge, which is a much smaller nail hole. It's less putty and cleanup on the backside. The glue is really what's holding these boards on. So these pin nails just keep it from moving while the glue dries. So let's continue doing this back and forth. All right guys, so like I said, the easy way to figure this out in the field without having to know a whole bunch of different math and boring problems and crazy stuff is what we do is we have our two endpoints and then we just keep repeating center. So what I did was I marked center, I put our board up. Now what I'm going to do is I'm gonna mark center again. Got 74 and a half. Half of 74 and a half is 37 and a quarter. So I'll mark 37 and a quarter. 37 and a quarter, remember, is the center of our board. So now I have to take my board and measure my board, 3 and a half. Half of that, 1 3/4. So I'm gonna subtract 1 3/4 from that center point and that'll give me the starting edge closest to there. 37 and a quarter. I marked my center to just make it really easy. I can take my tape, put it on my center point, and I'm gonna come over 1 3/4. So that piece is set. So the next piece of our pattern is this 1x2 molding. I've cut that to length. Everything in this pattern is very straightforward. It matches up. So those planes here, I measure here to the inside. Stuck that piece in. I'm gonna do the same thing, repeat for this top pattern right here. Next, I'm gonna make this piece. Throw this on top. The last step that I have is I've gone through and I've pre-measured all of my gaps just to confirm that I get a nice tight fit. I'm gonna go cut a top piece and a bottom piece for all of these panels, and I'm gonna stick those in and get it ready for paint. All right guys, so the final step before we get this thing ready for paint is we're gonna put our top and bottom trim pieces to match. I've pre-cut different moldings to match the existing layout. We're gonna stick that up top, stick that up bottom. The important thing in here is we're gonna glue the back, and when these seams meet on this seam, we're gonna use some wood glue, so when we sand it, it just helps to keep it from cracking. So I'll show you what that looks like. repeat that all the way down the line and wrap this puppy up. There it is, guys. We got our panel up. We started with just drywall. We went ahead and matched the existing layout. We'll recap the steps. We put our MDF panel on the wall. We took our base molding to match, ran our base molding, and we ran all our verticals to set the pattern. Then we came in, put our top trim on to match the existing, finished the top off with a nice flat molding again, and then we came back through. This process could have been done one of two ways. We matched the existing layout, but they added pieces to expand this pattern and shaker it out. So there's kind of two ways you could have done this. If you wanted to reverse it, you could have ran the top and bottom piece larger and then done the verticals in after. I like this way, at least for the start, because we have a finished edge running all the way up instead of a raw edge. So if you like this and want to see more of it, stay tuned. Keep plugging into our channel and like and subscribe.